Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, special guests. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting of the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, May 6th, 2013 order. We will begin with an invocation led by Councillor Accursi, followed by the singing of our national anthem led by Councillor Papp, and I would ask all to rise, please.
Shall we pray? Lord, to whom much is given, much is expected. Grant that as this council meets to take up the business of the people, they demonstrate wisdom in all their deliberations. May the decisions that are made in this place of government be guided by strength and courage. Be with each council member as they consider each policy, bylaw, and procedure placed before them. Amen.
Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron all, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Our first item of business before we get into presentations is the approval of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Accursi, that the agenda for the May 6th, 2013 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any amendments to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest, that is conflicts of interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any conflict of interest they need to disclose at this time? I do have one item. It is under section 17.3, a bylaw relating to a site plan agreement with a specific property. I own property very close to that area, and I'm in the circulation area of the planning documents for that. So I'm going to declare a conflict, and I would ask Councillor Clark to take the chair at that time period. And are there any other conflicts of interest? Can that be noted in the minutes, please? Thank you. So first we'll begin with presentations, and I would ask Councillor Clark to assist me as the Deputy Mayor. Can we squeeze everybody in? Some room around here.
Go in. Come around here.
So we have a special honor here today, Council and ladies and gentlemen. We have the U10 Novice Boys Pelham Panthers basketball team who won the Gold Award at the OBA Finals, beginning of April. That's wonderful. Here you are sporting your awards. Congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause. This Ontario Cup is the pinnacle, they say, of the season and the pinnacle of basketball in the province. And it's because of the guidance of your coaches, but also your passion as players, and no doubt the passion of fans and parents as well, that you worked hard to win this OBA victory. So congratulations to you. It occurred in London in early April, is that correct? You guys were excited here earlier this afternoon. They were here. They were here earlier. They gathered. They watched a video that one of their coaches put together about their season. They were very, very excited, and then they went to a local pizzeria and had probably too much to eat. Is that right? So lots of pizza in their bellies. You probably couldn't play championship basketball right now because you're so full, is that right? So we have some certificates that we'd like to present to you on behalf of council and of course the town. And Councillor Clark, the deputy mayor, is going to help me. We also have some lapel pins that we'd like to give to you. This is the pin that each of us wear at council. This is the crest for the town, and you can see it displayed here in our council chamber. So it's the special crest for our community, and it signifies our community. The bottom, there's Latin there. It says Fleuriant Pelham, which means may Pelham flourish. So you can carry that with you along with your medal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you each up, and I believe these are in no particular order. No, they might be in alphabetical order. And then I would ask you to gather just around here, and the newspapers want to do a photo, okay? And maybe some of your parents as well. So first I have Quinn Bendis. Quinn, Mary. Congratulations, Quinn. Best wishes to you, so this is for you. Take that.
Congratulations, good job.
What is the Bleach? Riley Bleach? Is that how you say it, Riley? I got it right? All right, congratulations, Riley. Will Capes. Come on up, Will. I think I saw you on the videos there and the pictures. Congratulations. TJ Hurley. Let's give him a round of applause to calling in. How's this sound? Right? Joseph Keeley. Adam Kleinsmith. I'm going to get this wrong. Joshua LaRochelle. Is that right? LaRochelle. Joshua LaRochelle. Matthew Martell. There he is. Your baseball season. No more baseball? No more baseball. Okay.
No, I'm doing baseball.
Oh, you are. Good. Congrats. Noah Minor.
Is he allowed to listen in?
That's okay.
He's not feeling well, so his brother's going to accept.
Okay. What's your name? Devin. Congratulations to first officer. Congratulations on your brother. Okay. And Councillor Clark has a little pin here for you as well. Thank you. Appreciate it. Isaiah Pilkington. Welcome. And Zion Pilkington. Lucas Ponting. Alexander Rubino.
Not here.
Not here. Okay, we'll give that to the coach. Edson Sanecki. How do you say that? How do I say it? Sanecki. I got it right. Congratulations. Connor Schumann. Okay, congratulations. Thomas Valancourt. Matthew Zoratek. Did I say that right? Zoratich. Matthew Zoratich. Okay. No, it's not. I'm sorry I got it wrong. We got a candy wrapper. They're like candy wrappers going out there. They're little wrappers for the thing. And now the coach, Brian Fletch. I said this right. Bleach. Okay. I'm sorry. Right early. Paul Sinecki. And Martin Valancourt. This is for your planner that isn't here. And also we have this plaque that you can take in your house. You can share that around. All right, congratulations. Thank you. So let's give him a round of applause. And now, with everyone's indulgence, we're going to let the media take over to take a nice photo.
I really enjoyed it. We've had 2 meetings so far, and we've got a fair amount for that such a group. The EDO-CAOs is so far a disaster, but I have convinced them to bring Min in and do a session on what exactly are we doing, what are we working on, and come up with an action plan. So then, so that's happening at the end of May, and then from there, hopefully we'll have a pretty good action plan. So they, you know, it's trying to look like herding cats. I mean, they've all, you know, they just, swear to God, they're capable of just saying, okay, let's do something different and let's just do it. You know, give it a try. You know, but it's kind of nuts. It's really nuts.
Sorry. Okay. Everybody looking right
So,
here at the
I managed to get that one, so that was good.
right here at the camera. Everybody, big smiles all the way around.
Right, and then we'll have, okay, what is,
Hold it.
what are we trying to do as a work?
Another one just like that, looking right here. I want your dentist to know you've been flossing just by looking at the paper. Big smiles.
But interestingly,
Teeth all the way
right,
around.
the 2 issues they picked to focus on.
Another paper. Here's the other Sarah.
First one is sort of Niagara branding as an economic development destination, and the second one is unified zoning and planning across the 12 municipalities. So if you walk into one, the process is the same.
All right, well, let's give him a round of applause. Congratulations. You guys didn't expect to participate in the morning, and I was talking to practices and all that stuff. He ended up doing all of these. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, guys.
Good work.
We pitched that.
Mike, congratulations. Good work.
Congratulations, Coach.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for your commitment to that. And we're going to talk about form, and we're going to talk about unified zoning.
Thank you.
So that's a bit of a side project.
Take care.
And then we're going to have to report back.
See you later, guys.
For further discussion. Hopefully, Mayor Dave's going to turn it down. So we're going to subtly use the process in the agenda, as opposed to doing a full-out session. Yeah. See what happens.
It's always great to see kids involved and stuff. Especially the little one says, I'm playing baseball. What are you talking about?
And once again, congratulations to the U10 Novice Boys Pelham Panthers basketball team who won gold. I was speaking to one of the parents earlier, and they said that they started the season just by doing practices and sort of pick up ball on Wednesdays, and they decided that they really had something special. So they put together a season of 10 games and tried out for the OBAs and ended up carrying their division. So quite a remarkable thing. So congratulations to them, and best of luck next year. Next on the agenda, we have Mr. Ian Lucas from the Public Service Request System for the Town of Pelham. Mr. Lucas, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff and public, observers. My name is Ian Lucas. I'm with I think it's Pelham's latest high-tech startup company called Public Service Request, Inc., based right here in Font Hill. We've been having an interesting couple of months with the town, and Mayor Dave and Darren Ottaway asked me if I would come and just explain to you what we've been doing and invite you to participate. By the way, that's a hard act to follow. The only connection I can find to it is that, you know, this is another way of winning, but we're doing the winning this time. So
Perfect.
what we do basically, the purpose of our system, we've started a system implemented at the town. It's called Public Service Request. The purpose of the system is threefold. One, it's to make your constituents happier on a consistent basis. Two, it's to streamline some of the business processes within the town with respect to handling requests internally and externally. And associated with that is the ability to reduce cost of service delivery, which obviously is a key component. And three, we're hoping that the tool will enable you to interact, I wouldn't say more efficiently, but perhaps on a more consistent basis with your constituents, should you choose to use it. The system itself, what I wanted to do quickly was to basically show you what it does. I'll very quickly explain. Anybody anywhere can come into the system, create what we call a service request, which could be anything from a complaint to a request for information, to suggestions, even thank yous, we hope. And what we do is help direct that request to the person that's responsible for resolving it or accepting it. And the system is actually available across North America, single website. Anybody can come in, enter a service request, and based on the location and what it is, we'll direct it to the right person in the right organization. You're our anchor client. Let's put it that way. We have two more already in the Niagara area, and Darren Ottaway and I are going tomorrow to try our hand at a presentation to 250 GIS experts from across the province, and see how well we do in front of them. The system, I'm just going to quickly go through the actual system. Do you mind if I just sit for a second?
Go ahead.
For those of you that have these beasts, which I'm sure you all do by now, I think the town has been liberally handing them out to everyone but me. I had to go and get my own. The system you're about to see runs on one of these things, an iPhone, a BlackBerry, whatever you choose. I'm using a computer here that I'm not familiar with, so I'm going to fire it up. This is our front page. This is the front page that is used by staff in the town. Everybody in the town now, all 59 staff members, have been trained to use this. So behind Mr. Manel's head, you can see that purple thing was not his silhouette. He's never going to talk to me again. Basically, what we're going to do is start using this system. Very, very simple. 4 pieces of information, only 2 of which are critical. What is the request related to? Click on the select button, and you get a list of possible service inquiries that you might want to make. You can see there's a whole list here ranging from water distribution, planning, zoning, parks, trails, even internally or even externally you can address the clerk's office and so on. So I'm going to pick one up here. I don't know which one we want to pick. Let's pick, which one do you want? Anybody? How about animal welfare? Actually, trees is the one we should be using because that's the most popular one at this time of year. We'll have there's a dead animal report. Let's use that one.
Oh boy.
So if somebody wants to report that there's a skunk or a raccoon or a deer or something that's on the public right-of-way somewhere, and that's where we come in to define where. So can somebody give me an address where you're likely to find a dead animal? In Pelham.
20 Pelham Town Square.
Town Square.
20 Pelham Town Square.
That's just the smell of skunks.
Imaginative.
2020 bar.
You don't know.
So we'll say it's gonna-
Incidentally, that's the town hall.
Yes. If you actually write in Town Hall, as Carrie knows, you actually get a location in East Germany.
That's where we send all the complaints.
Of course. Bit of a complicated address.
We're getting a map here of Town of Pelham. We don't seem to be-
Well, zip
No.
doesn't work.
We should have said Pelham instead of Ponto.
This is embarrassing, isn't it?
Black hole by the white hole, is that what it is?
My God, we've been white.
It should have been here a long time ago. Let me just
Try another address.
Try another address.
find out, well, yeah. Try another address. Shouldn't make any difference which address it is.
No, shouldn't.
We see no skunks here.
No dead animals here.
We've been doing this day in, day out for 2 months, and of course, let's do something different.
Let's do a snow problem.
Oh, yeah.
Snow problem, okay.
With
We
snow
want
on the list.
something on roads. Winter control. This is obviously near and dear to somebody's, not, oops,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, that's good.
Streets not plowed.
Streets not plowed.
Yeah. I live in Pancake Lane. Doing. Nobody's here.
We still haven't got there.
Pancake Lane.
For pancake.
Put an address.
200.
Johnny Rowan's address.
I sure hope the map comes up this time.
We do too. Hate to think that we're at the town council of a town that doesn't exist.
Probably gonna have to use Ridgeville.
Oops.
Serious. My mail comes back.
Is it Ridgeville?
Oops.
Oh, it shouldn't matter, it's Google Maps. There's just some, I don't know if it's the,
Pelham doesn't appear on that. Try Font Hill.
Yeah, no, try
Notice
Ridgeville.
nothing's coming up.
Ridgeville. Try Fontana first.
let me just see if the system is in fact something wrong.
Is he live on there?
Yeah.
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 See, I have what the map is supposed to look like.
Thank you.
Is right here, and I apologize for this, but for those of you that want to see it on this is what it should look like on the screen. I can't explain why it isn't, other than the fact it might be an old browser. Everybody's seen this before.
Oh.
Mm.
So that's, just try it one more time. Trying the same thing over and over again on a computer is probably not the smartest thing to do. But anyway, we essentially after you've picked the problem that you want to report, you can add pictures to it, unlimited number of images, notes to the images, and a description, and then hit the report button, and off it goes. You'll have to try this in the privacy of your own homes, and you'll see that it works. Anyway, the result is that you can generate a service request. I'm not going to try and figure out what that is. There's no point at this time doing that. I'll just be embarrassed. The good news is that it's working on here, so that's the important thing too. Essentially, what you're doing is building up a series of these service requests, and the town of Pelham has chosen to do this internally and externally. Internally first, so that by rationalizing a series of systems inside the town operations, all of the departments are gradually starting to use this particular system for reporting internal issues that become typically work items, work orders, or get resolved very, very quickly. The external component is going to be coming when you go through your new website rollout and rebranding process, which I think is July, something like that. At which time the public will be invited to participate a lot more in this process. At the moment, the public can participate, and you can help them do this, and the staff at the town are already helping them do this. When somebody is calling in or calling you, arriving at the front desk, making an inquiry that requires some kind of effort on behalf of one or more people in the town, it's very simple to actually create the service request on their behalf. So I'm envisaging you sitting at home on a Sunday about to enjoy your roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, and somebody calls and complains about something. I'm sure that never happens, but if it did happen, you would have the opportunity to ask them, engage them in conversation, say, we're trying to do a better job of tracking these things, give me your email, I'll enter it into the system for you, and then what happens is as the problem gets resolved by town staff or information gets provided, that's fed back automatically to the constituent. Does that make sense? So we're not only drawing in service requests, we're also automatically delivering the service status of each of those service requests to the person that's most interested in having it resolved. That happens through the normal process of doing the work. It doesn't add any additional burden to the people actually doing the work. It's just part of the process. There's security and privacy and so on, triggers involved in that, and double checks to make sure that people aren't seeing information they shouldn't. But there's also checks to make sure people are seeing information that they should. So it should, a lot of shoulds here, but it will make the interaction, we think, between the public and town staff much more, a much smoother and more consistent process. So people can expect a certain level of response over a period of time as the system rolls out. At the back end of this, I'm going to attempt to do a login. I'm going to sit down again for this, and I'm going to Darren, do you mind if I use your name in vain?
Mm-mm. No, that's just scary. Because he has Darren's.
This looks very Spartan. This is kind of Google Spartan style. But this is what Darren sees, and it's a superset of what everybody else in the town can see. We've divided the town up, believe it or not, into 24 sub-departments, logical operating groups within the town, within the standard departments. And each person within that group can see what's happening in their group. And then as you move up the hierarchy, the management hierarchy, when you get up to Darren's level, Darren can see everything that's going on. So I'm just going to click on, we call the dashboard here. And you can see at this point, Darren is overseeing the Humane Society. Did you know Darren was a... And this is the Humane Society is one of our other customers. They're already up and running, but the Welland Humane Society operates in the County of Haldimand and 6 other areas. But the area where they operate in Pelham, the town of Pelham can now see exactly what they're doing in the town of within the town boundary. So Darren has a view into what the Humane Society is doing within the town. Same thing with the Wainfleet drainage engineer. And in the town of Pelham itself, look at that, we're right on 150. So Darren effectively is looking at all the service requests and taking a 30,000-foot view and gradually working his way down to the point where he can go down to detail level. Let's go into roads.
I just put that one in the roads while you were talking.
Did you? The new one, one of the new ones?
I don't know.
Did yours
I
work
put
fine,
in,
Mr.
yes, it did on my,
Okay. So it's probably a permissions issue on the. All right. So here's the roads. We've got 6 new service requests. What was the number you put in? Winter Road, North Cloud. Here we
AF704.
go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to see the details. Here we go.
Adam, you have a
Here's the
map.
map. So we should be at, is it 200 Pancake?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let's have a look at the satellite view. Let's go in and take a closer look.
Stop stone many days ago.
Recognize cars and driveways if you keep drilling down. So you can see we capture this information and it's available to everybody within the town who has access to it or should have access to it. And you can see that the description that Mayor Dave put in was road not plowed, stopped snowing days ago, please plow. You didn't put any images in, did you? Okay. And we can see the history being built up. It was created by a citizen, and Darren has just looked at it.
Put Larry's
So
email.
I won't go into detail here, but basically everything that happens to the service request gets captured in a central location, and becomes very useful for things like looking backwards, liability, service level compliance analysis, all those kinds of things. I don't know whether you spotted we had reds and greens as I went through there. Those are the what we call service level agreements. That's service level compliance that I understand the town is working its way through in terms of being able to measure activities as far as completion times and dates are concerned. So anyway, I've overstayed my welcome, but what we'd like to do, with your permission, members of council, is actually enter you into the system as special users, as elected official users. If we do that, you'll each receive an email with a link to let you log into the system and you can start using it. We can, if you wish, I think you'll find it very intuitive to use. It's quite straightforward. If you need any help, there's plenty of help at the town. All the staff have been trained. Mike Guglielmi in IT can help. I'm more than happy to help if anybody has any questions or wants one-on-one training. It's in our interest, obviously, to have you a very satisfied customer. So what we'd like to do is sign you up and then get your feedback over a period of time as to whether you find this useful. What we'll do is I'll arrange for Mike to send out some hints on how to approach using the system when you're talking to members of the public. Would that be acceptable?
Members of council may have some questions for you, Mr. Lucas, and then I'm going to call on the CAO to really answer sort of the utility of this and the benefit of this. And maybe I'll call on Darren to do that first and then move to Councillor Papp. Is that right, Councillor?
Sure, by all
Okay.
means, I have several questions, but...
So, Mr. Ottaway, can you just explain, Mr. Lucas showed us how it can be used and the functions of it. Can you explain how it's your intention that staff use this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a number of benefits from this system. I'm sure some of council, if not all, is aware of some of the larger cities' processes like using 311 service, which has been very successful. It's also very expensive, and you have to buy the application or buy the software in order to run that type of a system. This provides a very good alternative to that, and what it allows us to do is a number of things. One, if we set a customer service standard, for example, that potholes get fixed in 3 days, that's our commitment to the community. Once we receive a complaint, not only is the complaint directed immediately to the right person, so you're not having to go through this chain of command. So if our pothole guy is Ryan gets this email in the field in real time and then can look at it. Not only does he know where it is, he can respond immediately, he can accept ownership of it. And once that happens, the clock starts to tick, and the person who lodged the complaint can actually monitor our progress online using the system. So when the work is completed, Ryan's, obviously the pothole is filled, Ryan signs off on it. Then I can tell, sitting in my office, whether or not our customer service standard has been met or exceeded, and the person who lodged the original complaint will get notification that the problem's been resolved. So it's extremely powerful that way. when we start looking at things like performance management, sometimes performance management can be very hard to measure. But with this, I can now tell whether any employee in the organization is hitting the customer service targets as required, and we can base performance around this type of data. The other advantage is that we can start tracking trends. So if we notice that we're getting a large number of calls about potholes on a particular street, that data should alert us to the fact that there may be a larger problem there. And I'm simply using potholes as an illustration, but if there's a number of service complaints on any issue, it can call attention to a broader issue that may require council's attention. But I can gather that data and then come and inform council of, you may have a problem in this area, I might recommend a new policy change or a bylaw change or whatever the remedy may be on a governance level to deal with those sorts of things. So just as a very quick overview, it's extremely powerful from my end. The advantage on the council side is that, as Ian said, when you get a complaint from a resident, I had one that came in from a councillor this morning, would have been a great example had the councillor had access to the system to simply log the information in, and it would have gone directly to the person that was dealing with that matter. The resident would have gotten an email. So-and-so is responsible for this. Our customer standard is this. The remedy will happen at this time. And then when the issue had been resolved, which it was very quickly today, the resident would have gotten an email back saying, problem solved, or, problem's been rectified. If you have any further problems, let us know. So it's a great tool for council to access staff without crossing that administration governance boundary. So you can still have the representative role as a councillor, but you don't have to come through me in order to get an action on something else. You can simply log the information directly into the system on behalf of your constituent and have the problem resolved, and have the confidence to know that the right staff has got it, and we're going to meet or beat our customer service expectations. So those are some of the highlights.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Councillor Papp?
I have several questions. I would prefer maybe at some point to have a much more intense discussion about this. First thing is potholes, etc., but there are issues that we receive sometimes that are highly sensitive. And I presume, Mr. Lucas, you probably answered to the affirmative that to protect interests of citizens, and I can think of a couple recently we've been dealing with, that the question is, when it goes back there into the constituent that the matter's been resolved or being under, are we automatically copied? Do we know that that has happened, or is that just something that goes between the service deliverer and the constituents? How are we in the loop?
Mr. Lucas?
If I can just address two parts to that question.
Right.
Firstly, on the security side, all of the tricky issues, the delicate ones that many people shouldn't see, will be focused through the office of the CAO and mayor, most likely. And we can configure the system to actually do that, so nobody else can see it at all. Secondly, we can configure the system to actually deliver the initiator of the service request a confirmation when the thing has been completed. If you'd like that, we can set that up for you easily. But that's.
I think I don't want to take any more time. I think it's the question is that we are also receiving, and we need to be able to acknowledge
Yes.
that that the matter has been resolved.
Yes.
And that was been one of the most hardest things for us to do. So if that's a possibility, and I think those logistics, I think we need to discuss so it becomes smooth, and that I hate to. Sometimes we don't get into very trivial matters when we're trying to deal with them. I mean, people will, once they get the hang of it, will be sending all kinds of stuff through. But there are certain things that we need to be kept aware of as counselors, so that we're not say, okay, somebody asked us about the snow plowing, but the matter was taken care of.
Yes.
The counselor in that area or that ward knows, yes, it was handled, it was done, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that. I have.
It's built in to be configured to do that. So
Right, good. Okay, that's, and then the confidentiality, because I can think of, Mr. Mayor, and you and I, there's a couple others that we've had recently where the request from the citizen was that it be kept confidential, and the service request was a legitimate one, but on the same token, I can understand we don't want it, that there's all these eyes looking in on these level of complaints and service and what the responses are, and I think that protection is essential. So I'm quite satisfied. Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions for Mr. Lucas? straightforward. Next steps, Mr. Lucas?
Next steps would be to, at your pleasure, to sign the councils up as,
Yeah, let's try it.
you know, and get involved.
Okay.
And then I would suggest, at some subsequent time, I would really be interested in getting your feedback.
Right.
And suggest that, I don't know how appropriate it is for you, if you need to contact me, I'm quite happy to do it because I'm outside of the staff boundary. If you have questions, I'm happy to help or support. I don't know how that works, but that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
And also keep you informed as to how the system is actually rolling out and when it comes near to being exposed fully to the public, because you'll need to know that. You'll need to be aware of it.
And that, maybe there's a question for the CAO. The rollout date, it was mentioned, it's the intention that this is rolled out this summer, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as Mr. Lucas mentioned, we're live internally only. So if I have a request to fix a hole in my roof, I can use this system to learn how to use it by sending the facilities manager a service request so she can come and fix it. So we're figuring it out and we're learning it now as all staff has been trained. Our intention is to have this as a very large component of our new website launch so that residents will see the new brand, the new website, but also the new service request system. And it's the intention to launch all of those items by the Summer Festival in July.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Papp?
Quickly, what other municipalities, Mr. Lucas, through you, Mr. Mayor, are actually either using this or thinking about using this right now in the area?
Other municipalities thinking about using it will be St. Catharines
Okay.
and also the region.
Oh,
If I can just spend 15 seconds on that. Obviously, there's an overlap,
right.
tremendous overlap between services
Right.
that the public doesn't understand come from the region versus the town. And one of the things that the system does do is separate that for you and trigger the right response to the right person in
The
the
right level.
organization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great news story. It's a Pelham-based company that's working together with our community to do this great technology. So we look forward to using it in the public launch. So thank you very much for describing it
Mr.
to us
Mayor.
today.
Thank you,
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And we're going to try and I guess we're going to have to. Somebody's going to have to log out Mr. Ottaway on that service request, and then we have another presentation. Kim Wilmot and Associates from Sierra Planning. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you again for joining us.
I prefer to stand. Good evening, Council, members of staff, and members of the public who are here. Thank you for having us. In 2012, in the summer of 2012, Sierra Planning and Management was commissioned by the town to undertake a 10-year cultural plan, a cultural master plan for the town of Pelham. Some of the key deliverables, were to outline the short-term and long-term priorities for fostering cultural prosperity in the town. Now, one thing I think that the town of Pelham absolutely made clear to us at the beginning of this process was that it absolutely had to be a community-driven strategy. It had to be clear on what the vision was for the development of the cultural sector in Pelham. And it also had to be clear as to how priority actions could be implemented in a very practical way, in a very definitive way in terms of identifying individuals, stakeholders, that are responsible and have a role to play in the development of the sector over the long term. So I believe that we've produced a document that is a strategic framework to direct and sustain and leverage cultural investment in Pelham. And as a secondary aspect of the project, one of the tasks that we did have was to develop a super database of cultural assets in the town. And we took the approach that for the most efficient use of resources, we should build on work that has already been done, melding existing databases, refining it into I think, a very purposeful and useful database. So we took an approach, a very hands-on approach to this project, a very collaborative approach. I would say that we had great input from the community right out the gate. We engaged multiple stakeholders. We did a series of consultation, everything from event outreach to focus groups with local stakeholders in the arts community as well as regionally. And we also, I believe, developed a plan that was very practical in scope in what could be achieved. And we hope, and I'm sure we'll get your feedback today, that what we've recommended and put forward is the right fit for Pelham and has truly encompassed what culture is in Pelham and what the feel, the sense of place, and the sense of belonging is here. Throughout the consultation process, we heard a number of positive things that were already happening in the town, and I believe that the plan itself builds on this, builds on a solid foundation. And what we heard from individuals was that not only does Pelham have a rich history, be it natural or rural or cultural heritage, but it has that wonderful position in Niagara where it's close enough to the development that's going on, but it's maintained its rural charm, and that's something that keeps on attracting residents. And municipal support, to council's credit, a lot of the comments that we got back from the public was that we do have a supportive council that is very geared towards supporting local events and supporting the community, and I believe that for us that's a solid foundation, that whatever we proposed in the plan in itself will help you to bolster the role that you have in supporting culture. I think I should state right off the bat that the plan takes a position that the municipality is not to be deemed a creator of culture, but a supporter and a facilitator. However, partnerships can be fostered. I believe that that's the position that this plan has taken. Community spirit, a very, very strong volunteer community, and much of what we've heard is that a lot of local events, a lot of one of the main cultural drivers is that energy of your volunteer sector, and we recognize that the town has been taking steps to acknowledge the volunteer community and what they've been doing, and you continue to work with them in new and exciting ways. And that there are a number of existing partnerships to be built on. I think from what we've heard from the community is that there are already things going on. The town is already working with the business community on developing festivals, on developing events, but the community does acknowledge, at least from the consultations that we have done and the feedback that we have garnered in various aspects, the community acknowledges that amongst themselves, among social groups themselves, they could coordinate better. There's probably mechanisms that could be put in place to get the municipality involved at an earlier stage, and also to work collaboratively. And that I think encompasses some of the recommendations that we put forward in the plan. But we also heard a number of issues in terms of moving forward, setting the vision, and keeping pace with the sector as it develops. The first being, of course, set and maintain the vision. The community is key for council to I believe, put forward its definitive position in terms of supporting the sector, supporting local artisans, and how it might develop in terms of fostering creative industry attraction, but also maximizing partnerships that they believe there's work that could be done there, both regionally and locally, between the public sector and the private sector and the nonprofit sector, as well as across municipalities. There's work to be done. Develop and leverage facilities and infrastructure. And I would like to compliment actually the Pelham community, because they're sometimes it's always about building new things, but the locals here are keen to see the adaptive use of what they believe to be existing beautiful spaces that could be transformed into cultural hubs or multi-use spaces. And so I believe what you will see in the plan itself, in the detailed actions, and we won't have the opportunity to go through them in detail, is that there are a series of recommendations, not only for considering what say a multi-use facility might accommodate, but what do you have already that can be built on? You have lovely structures like the old Pelham Town Hall. How can it be better used? I think that's what you'll find in this plan as a key recommendation as it relates to creating creative spaces. Bolstering cultural awareness via communication and advocacy. There seems to be, with some residents, a disconnect between actually what's happening and what's happening in terms of the cultural scene, the activity that's happening, and how much they actually know, to be honest. And it doesn't seem to matter how long they've been living in the community. There seems to be somehow a disconnect still with some residents. And there's some work that could be done in terms of education, and maybe that has a bit to do with developing and expanding cultural programming, what the community can have access to, especially for seniors and for the youth. So we developed a vision based on the issues that we heard and based on what the community has told us, that Pelham should develop, the town of Pelham should develop as a place where people, arts, history, and creativity connect. And I think connectivity is a thing that came out so much through consultations. There needed to be better connections between locals and what's happening in the sector. There needed to be better partnerships between the municipality and other regional partners in terms of fostering regional tourism and other aspects. So I think the vision plays on that. And we identified 4 guiding principles that establishes, I believe, what we feel is the key role for the town to play. The first being that the town of Pelham supports the enhancement of community well-being by ensuring access to cultural opportunities for all residents, irrespective of age, ethnicity, income, and gender. The second being the town will encourage the development of local artists and the attraction and retention of creative talent and industry. Thirdly, the town of Pelham is committed to the enhancement of cultural spaces and places in a manner which maximizes the utilization of existing resources, secures the future value of heritage buildings, and adopts a principle of multi-use to ensure sustainability. The final guiding principle is the town of Pelham will maximize available partnership opportunities, private, public, not-for-profit, local, regional, and provincial, in ensuring the effective delivery and expansion of cultural programs and activities, as well as the enhancement and growth of cultural spaces, experiences, and industries. And so I'll just take you quickly through the high-level strategic directions. And we identified 6 in total based on the issues that we've heard, and the actions within the plan follow this framework. The first being to cultivate community cultural awareness, knowledge sharing, and participating in culture, as I said, both for youth and seniors and across communities. To foster creative industry development, growth, and attraction, particularly as it relates to supporting small businesses, small cultural enterprises, which happens to be the majority share of local cultural industries. The development and enhancement of cultural spaces and places in various forms, with adopting a principle of multi-use, but also adopting an open mind to what types of new facilities might be created, especially along heritage routes as they are developed. The expansion and enhancement of cultural products and experiences. I think one thing that we recognize in the plan is that the entertainment scene in Pelham is really gaining traction, especially regionally. And it's something to be built on. And it's something, to be honest, residents can't seem to get enough of. Investment and development of culture through town planning. Through a variety of means this can be accomplished. One of the key recommendations is the hiring of a municipal cultural officer to really hone in on the implementation of both the cultural and heritage master plan, which we don't consider to be separate documents. They must be implemented together and they must be dovetailed. And we recognize, of course, that what can be accomplished on an annual basis will depend on council's priorities, but at the same time, I think it's a step in the right direction to make sure both plans are implemented in a synchronous way, so there's no overlap and no ineffective use of resources. The strengthening of cultural tourism and regional presence. I think Pelham, and the plan states this quite well, Pelham has yet to tap into its role as a regional player in cultural tourism. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot that could be done, especially as value-added agriculture develops over the years. And I've just highlighted a few of the other priority short-term recommendations. One being that the establishment of a clear commitment to arts, heritage, and cultural preservation within the municipality's corporate priorities. The development of an integrated implementation plan for both the heritage and cultural master plans, as well as the establishment of a cultural committee or roundtable, which we don't envision to be separate from the heritage committee. In fact, we do recommend that representatives of the heritage committee sit on that committee. We see the roundtable as being a forum where the municipality can be involved at a very early stage without, I would say, having the onus for the development of events, for the development of culture being something that's solely on their shoulders. In fact, it would develop as a partnership right from the beginning with locals. The plan also acknowledges that really the town of Pelham has been working quite hard to cultivate a supportive policy environment for cultural development and preservation, especially as it relates to the preservation of heritage buildings with the urban beautification strategy. We recognize that there's potential for the community improvement plan to further those objectives, and we've recommended that in the plan itself. The town already spending around $49 per capita on culture, which is comparable to other communities in Ontario. And while we do realize that the recommendations of the plan must fit not only within your budget priorities, and of course will have an impact, and I believe that we have agreed that we will provide budgetary implications as a separate document to the plan so that council can have it for detailed consideration. But we have also recommended a plan that hones in on partnerships as much as that they can be found, as much as they can be built, to ensure fiscal and organizational efficiency as you move forward over the next 10 years. So I'll just open the floor for any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work. I wonder if members of council have any questions for our presenter.
I hope we got it right.
Well, it looks great, and certainly I know that through the year that you were involved in many of those events that you highlighted as well. So tried to embody yourself in the community, and so I know that when you speak about it through experience as well as through the interaction with residents in our community. And I know that some members of council were present at some of those discussions that you had, those open houses. And there were very lively discussions, very vibrant discussions, and very heartfelt discussions as well with members of the community that feel so strongly about Pelham and its place in our hearts, but also its place in the region. So thank you very much for sharing that. Do members of council have any questions for our presenter at this time? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kim, again, congratulations on your company putting together, I think, an outstanding piece of work. In the implementation strategy, you mentioned the creation of a roundtable that's comprised of both heritage and culture, as well as hiring a municipal cultural officer. In what order do you see that, envision that happening? Do you see the need to have the cultural / heritage officer on staff prior to engagement of the public in the creation of that committee? Or would you see that we could move ahead with that roundtable committee in advance of of us having any financial implications on the, budget.
Right. I would put to council that, based on your knowledge of the appetite, to organize and really jump on the implementation of both the heritage and cultural master plans, then you might take it that it would be best to begin with the establishment of the committee. But ideally, the cultural officer should play a key role in the organization, and in some respects, the coordination of that committee. So there are benefits to establishing the committee offhand, but I believe that too there are benefits to having the municipal cultural officer involved at the beginning, not trying to get in on the back end once relationships and working patterns have been formed.
Thank you. Councillor?
Just as a further question through you, Mr. Mayor, would you envision that the cultural officer, heritage officer would work with our recreation director?
Yes, actually, he or she should report directly to Vicky. No, we envision that it would be a smooth fit, working closely with programming in the recreation and social wellness department, but reporting directly to the director of the department as well. But we also see a bit of cross-appointment, needing to work with marketing, needing to work with other departments as to educating them on what the priorities are for cultural development, so that decisions are made in a manner where the priorities of the cultural plan are also considered within, I would say, other planning decisions in the municipality.
Okay.
One
Councillor?
further follow-up, if I may. Would you envision this role as being someone who would be utilizing his or her knowledge of the culture and heritage of our community to leverage that for economic development, per se?
Yes, absolutely. I think the role is very multifaceted. Now, this is why we have recommended that a dedicated staff person be taken on, because culture taps into so many aspects of economic development, tourism, of land use planning, especially as it relates to the preservation of your local heritage buildings. And it will require someone who is dedicated and can go across multiple sectors, engage multiple partners, and also play a key role in identifying funding as it crops up annually, both at the regional level as well as the provincial. It's really a dedicated task.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
One last question. This is my last
Second
question.
last question.
You mentioned that you would be following up with a support document outlining some of the costs that we might
Yes.
incur from a budgetary standpoint. Would you also be able to include in that schedule an outline of some types of fundings that are available to us provincially? And
We can, and we have mentioned some in the plan thus far. If I could call your attention to I believe it's Strategic Direction 3. Right. So it's action 5.3, and we've recommended a few, we've identified a few sources here. We can build on that,
okay.
but also we would like council to acknowledge that as provincial funding goes, it changes, and to bank on the same type of funding or the same level of funding or the same programs as the years go along, it's a bit difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Papp?
Yes.
Very quickly, thank you. Very comprehensive, very thought-provoking, because it also, picking up on Councillor Kersey's and my colleagues, all of this is integrated with a major, if you want to call it, driving force of what we as the town see ourselves becoming. And I'm not oversimplifying. So when people say, why do you want to live here?
Yeah.
What is it about it that you like? Good jobs, good culture, safe, etc. I would also prefer, if you could, from your experience and background, give us examples where this has been successfully implemented at a local municipal level using a tool like this, if it's possible to, if you have examples of that.
Using a cultural master plan? Okay. Well,
Or if the CAO, I mean, what I'm getting at is that I'm familiar with other communities such as it's the city of Hamilton, but Dundas, Ancaster, Coburg's done some examples. It'd be good for us to show, aside from what you've done here, is where this has actually flowed through, along with the costs that are affiliated with it, and have resulted in a kind of a major impact on helping those particular communities. And if, Mr. CEO, if you've got those.
Do you first have a comment, and then we'll...
oh, sorry, I would just love him to finish his comment, if that's okay.
I think he's looking for information on other
I
communities.
want
and-
examples
Other
of
communities.
municipalities that have taken this particular tool and actually successfully implemented it in a manner in which you've drafted out here before us.
Right, well, to be quite honest, cultural planning is something that has been, I would say, cropping up in recent years across a number of municipalities, and they have been engaging in it. I know St. Catharines has had theirs on the development for a long time. They did one, I think, back in 2002, and it's under revision. But relatively, cultural planning seems to be a bit newer. Especially, and it's popular because there's also the funding for it, but it's a number of small communities have implemented cultural plans. Oakville is one very good example. I think of the City of London, and they have just completed their cultural master plan, but they have already, having adopted policies of supporting local culture, fed those priorities into their municipal planning decision making. Actually, they've fed cultural master planning into their economic prosperity plan, which takes an absolutely different position when it comes to seriously developing the sector. And they already have in place grants for small cultural enterprises, 2 streams, large funding, I think it's about $1 million annually for the funding pot, and then smaller funding for project-based activities. And I can't stress enough that having that support as it relates to economic development and as it relates to it being on the municipality's priority list, the sector will develop, I think, in a more comprehensive manner. But also in London themselves, in the City of London itself, they have found that it has not only sustained, but I believe bolstered cultural industries over the last 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything further to that? I know you're chomping at the bit here to comment.
And then my thunder was stolen, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, good.
But I agree that the City of London was if I'm not mistaken, the first municipality in Ontario, if not Canada, to develop the concept of cultural master planning. And my mentor, Gord Hume, has written a few books, as you may be aware, called The Crink Economy. And that is going to be critical for Pelham moving ahead, especially with consideration of the planning issues on East Font Hill.
That's right.
Potential municipal facilities, as this plan talks about, et cetera. So I couldn't agree more. This is intertwined in a critical mix as far as what the municipality has direct control over when you're speaking about quality of life. You don't control education, you don't control healthcare, but you sure do control or support culture and heritage as a quality of life indicator for people wanting to move here because of knowledge-based economic development.
Good, thank you. And we've had Gord Hume speak to our business leaders, to our volunteers a year and a half ago at the Volunteer Appreciation, and so that really started the discussion with this. And so it's interesting to see it come full circle again in our discussion this evening. Thank you, Councillor Papp. Other things, Councillor Papp, anything further?
No, I think you've answered. That's exactly where I'm driving it.
Okay. Other members? One quick thing. Can you just briefly mention the mapping?
Yes. I believe council has copies of.
Yes.
Yeah, we have the plan. Just you've identified there on the dots, but
Right.
Can you just speak about how we can keep that up to date and the importance of that, and why mapping is an important feature of the
Oh, absolutely.
cultural
The
plan?
mapping we see as what we've done in our position is created baseline mapping. We see this evolving over time as cultural tourism develops, as the town continues to promote itself. What we have actually created, if you see the Excel spreadsheet, is a database complete with NAICS, as well as XY coordinates, longitude, latitude coordinates for mappability. So that can translate into a neighborhood level map on the municipality's website, as well as it can be translated into a map from visitors, potential visitors to the town, to identify local attractions, and it can be used as part of your tourism strategy.
Okay.
We also recommend regular updating of the database. It's simple enough in terms of the categories and the form that it's in to do that on an ongoing basis. There will need to be, of course, again, working between departments,
Right.
between the recreation department and the GIS, the planning department, to make sure that database is maintained, which is also why having a staff person, a full-time dedicated staff person, overseeing that process is so critical. There's really a lot of little things to do, and some very major things as well that requires dedicated attention.
Okay, thank you. And the CAO wants to comment on the mapping as well. We have the base map. What happens after that, Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for council's information, this data is extremely valuable, and it has been already provided to our chimps. Again, not monkeys, but our people working on our website. The plan for us is to do map layering, GIS map layering. So as you saw with the public service request when the Google map came up, similar to the little pinpoint that said we had a service request here, the maps contained in the document will actually appear on our website with those, again, those markers using a Google-based platform, that when a user would scroll over one of those dots with their mouse, that information would pop up in a little bubble. So if it was the Comfort Maple, for example, you scroll over that, a picture of the Comfort Maple comes up, the location of where it's at. You could even embed video clips of the maple blowing in the wind or whatever you want. So we're already started that process of a cultural heritage online mapping tools, which I think is going to be really exciting and valuable going into the future.
Good, thank you. One other question, Councillor Kersey spoke about the position. Just so that we make sure that we get what your vision is in terms of the position, do you have any thing you can share with staff in terms of the job description later on?
We do in the plan itself
Okay.
have a few, have recommended what the role
Okay.
of the cultural officer should be. So if I can direct your attention, council's attention to section strategic direction 5, and that would be 5.2. We have identified what
Okay.
we believe the role of the cultural officer should include. As we have it here,
Yes, I see that.
facilitating opportunities for networking, information and resource sharing among the community, cultural groups, and the coordination of the Pelham Cultural Committee, the development of a communications plan to promote local culture at the neighborhood, municipal, regional, and provincial level, the exploration of marketing and promotional partnerships for cultural programs, products, and experiences,
Page 21.
as well as the ensuring the regular updating of the cultural database itself and mapping. Facilitating capacity building for local artists, cultural businesses, and groups, festivals and events, etc., via linkages to a range of funding and business development opportunities. And the final one, I believe, is fostering partnerships with schools, nonprofits, private and public sector for the development and enhancement of cultural programming.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anything further from members of council on questions to the presenters? Thank you very much. Oh, I do have one more, and that is, can you share your presentations? I know there were some last minute changes. Doesn't have to be now.
Yes.
But the clerk is interested in having that for the record.
Yes.
Okay, so if you could do that. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your presentation, you bringing your colleagues and your work. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the information presented by Kim Wilmot of Sierra Planning regarding Pelham's Cultural Master Plan be received and the 2013 Cultural Master Plan be approved. Discussion regarding this? Is there any discussion? Mr. CEO, in terms of the action and the next steps for the master plan and looking at progress one makes on it, what are some of the next steps?
Mr. Mayor, some of the next steps are going to be taking a very close look at the strategic directions that are outlined as appendixes in the plan. Those really become the to-do list of work. There is some, as they say, low-hanging fruit, and there is some longer-term projects. And those will be, now the plan is approved, those will be absorbed into our overall strategic direction, if you will. And, you know, various departments, this doesn't lie solely on the Recreation and Culture Department. It does apply to planning, it does apply to finance and other departments. So we'll be looking at this holistically and how to implement these various steps moving forward to accomplish the things that have been outlined.
Okay, thank you. Others to the motion? So we look forward to this coming back to us. I think in order to make it something that's vibrant and living, we have to continue to make it a top priority. So once we approve it, I think council may want to consider in the future or now adopting the vision for culture and the strategic directions. That could be something as well that we want to do. I don't know if council's prepared to do that this evening, but that may well be something that staff can bring back for a recommendation for council to actually adopt that vision for culture and then the strategic directions underneath it. So I'm going to, without further comment from council, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work. Thanks. We look forward to moving forward on it. Thank you. The next item is supposed to be the report of Regional Councillor Brian Beatty. Councillor Beatty is in Toronto at Niagara Week this week and has indicated that he will certainly bring his presentation to us at our next meeting, and he sends his regards from Toronto. I'm going to be joining him tomorrow in Toronto to lobby and work with ministers and members of the legislature to try to promote the items here in the town, in the region, I'm sorry, and some items in the town. Next, we have the adoption of the minutes. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the minutes of the council meeting of April 15th, 2013 be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Errors or omissions in those minutes? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is consent agenda items. Do members have any items that they'd like to lift for separate consideration? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 11.3.2, the Township of Wainfleet resolution regarding wind turbine development.
Okay, thank you. Others? There being none, it's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the following consent agenda items be received and approved. Recommendations arising from the Policy and Priorities Committee meeting of April 15th. Second is the minutes of the Policy and Priorities Committee of the same meeting. The third is information correspondence items. There are 10 items. The first is Niagara Region regarding the tax policy, tax ratios, and tax rates. The third, Councillor Durley lifted the second. The third is the Township of Killaloe, Hardy and Richards. The fourth is the Niagara Association of Realtors letter. The fifth is correspondence from the Niagara Home Builders Association regarding postal mailboxes. The sixth, Niagara Region regarding the urban area boundary modifications in Fonthill, and I brought council up to speed on that last meeting. Or alluded to it last meeting. The seventh is the Pelham Public Library Board minutes of March 13th and 27th. The 8th, Fenwick 160th Anniversary Committee minutes of April 4th and 11th. The 9th, Pelham Active Transportation Committee minutes of March 19th. the 10th Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes of January 10th, February 21st, and March 28th. Good to see those minutes. And the 11th is the Summerfest Committee minutes of April 3rd, 10th, and 17th, another busy committee. And the final item is the clerk's report regarding the closed meeting review of the Ombudsman's office. Discussion regarding any of the items. Councillor Pat?
I'll be very quick, Mr. Mayor. I was going to lift this, but I think item 11.3.4, the letter from the Association of Realtors with respect to the land transfer tax, I think we should keep a careful eye on. I'm curious of who LUMCO is. Some could explain to me.
LUMCO is the large urban
Municipal.
and regional municipalities group. It's kind of like the top 10 of
Oh, the top 10, so
municipalities.
it'd be
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious why they would be pushing this, and we need to monitor that perhaps at AMO. That's something you should watch. I'm just worried about the impact. And secondly,
Yes.
the
Just a second,
Go
Councillor. Anybody further on that item? So Councillor Durley wants us to discuss
Sure, go
that
ahead.
item.
Yes, I
Councillor
agree,
Durley?
I agree wholeheartedly with that. It just seems like, and the item that I did lift mentions the word unwilling host, and I'm looking at perhaps somebody's going to be an unwilling host here because the region thinks that bigger is better, or somebody thinks it's bigger is better, that, we should automatically be jumping at the bit to say this is wonderful and we want to receive it. But, I'm looking at just exactly what Councillor Papp is saying, that we should have some control of this. It appears to me that listening to somebody's recommendation without really having an opportunity for us to contribute to them making that recommendation is not really conducive to dealing with our municipality the way our municipality wants to be dealt with. So I agree 100% with Councillor Papp and think that we definitely should be looking at ways in which we make some input before anything does come down to us. And again, there'll be further discussion
Yeah.
to that in things that are coming up later. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's the first I'd heard of this idea. I know the City of Toronto has the tool and they implement it and then they took it back.
Right.
And aren't doing it. It was a big issue there. But it seems that some of the large urban municipalities across the province are also trying to lobby the government to attain this. And it's essentially an advocacy campaign aimed at other revenue-generating powers, and one of them being the land transfer tax. And it is outlined in here about the City of Toronto. So thank you for highlighting that. Others on that? Any comments on that question? Okay, thank you, councillors. Councillor Papp, you had another item?
Very quickly, just right after that, the Niagara Home Builders Association just monitor this superbox levy. Here we go again. As new development comes up, I'm fascinated by the whole reference that the legality of Canada Post moving forward with this, and knowing them, they'll probably do it. So we just need to keep an eye on them, particularly as we're trying to encourage building and fostering prosperity. At the same token, we're adding on additional fees, and I just found it fascinating. And they are looking for support, but be interesting to work. I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, and I know you have a very close relationship with Mr. Allison, just to say, keep an eye on this for us. Just let us know what's going on. Then all of a sudden, it'll be just dropped on our lap and saying from here on in, any new development would require this particular superbox levy. Incredible.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. There's another councillor that wants to speak about this. So this is the idea that super box levy for mailboxes, $200 per house collected during the subdivision process. So I will speak to Mr. Allison about it.
Thank you.
And the clerk's noted that in the minutes. Councillor Durley, you had some comments regarding?
Yes, again, I can't agree more. To ask for somebody to pay extra money for a substandard, everybody would like to have delivery to the home rather than to have to walk through a storm and the unplowed street on Pancake Lane to
That's a long walk. That's
to
uphill both
access
ways.
a super mailbox in order to get their things. But certainly Canada Post is going to do exactly what they want to do. They are cutting costs and they're doing everything that they possibly can to make their operate as smoothly as they think is necessary. However, it certainly is not a benefit, I don't think, to individuals in our community, and I think that our duty is to try to make sure that we can get the best possible services for our people. To make them pay, as I mentioned before, for a substandard service is to me ridiculous. So if we can keep an eye on that and just say, you know, if you're going to deliver a substandard service, we're going to give you a substandard amount of money to finance.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to this? Councillor Clark?
Just further again to the two previous councillors, like, you know, we've talked about economic development, and, you know, if you speak to any business person, local or not local, anywhere, two main things, and that is to, you know, just to try and stimulate local business is to reduce fees and costs and reduce red tape, which both of these do. And again, to have another impact on the new housing market, there's so much spin-off. Like, I don't know what the exact number is, but it you know, it touches on this in this letter. Like, you know, when a new home goes in, you know, why do you think there's so many landscape companies here in Fonthill? Every single one of them, you know, there's an appliance truck that arrives, a furniture truck that arrives, there's a moving company that arrives. Then there's opportunities for, you know, kids cutting grass, snow removal. Like, the list just goes on. And if you keep hammering the new housing stuff, you're going to strangle the other businesses. They're all interrelated.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Kersey, did you want to comment as well?
Well, yeah, if I can. Well, I agree with my colleagues and express some of the similar concerns. I also would like to point out that both of these items will be beyond our jurisdiction, one being governed by the Municipal Act and the other is a federal jurisdiction, and that of Canada Post. As I understand the Municipal Act with respect to the land transfer tax, it's a tool that's been granted to the municipality that the municipality could choose to engage in, similar to having a CIP. It's there, it's a tool, it's available to us if we choose to use it. We can also choose not to use it. So there may be other municipalities that find themselves in a situation where they, and particularly the larger municipalities where the demand for infrastructure and stuff like that, and the need for funds is higher. Those would probably be the municipalities that would enact that. There's certainly, I can't foresee them, the province forcing that on us as having to be a specific levy, since they already collect land transfer tax at the provincial level. It's a tool that would be granted to the municipality to engage in if they choose to. So those are only my comments. I have the similar concerns, but I also think to a large extent, at least with respect to the land transfer tax, that will be within our jurisdiction. With respect to Canada Post, if the federal government passes legislation that says we must collect that, we won't have much say about it.
Agreed.
That's true. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Appreciate it, Councillor. I'm going to ask, Mr. Jennings is copied on the letter, and I wonder if he's heard anything further on it, or if not, maybe you could keep us up to date should you hear something. Mr. Jennings, have you heard anything?
Mr. Mayor, I have not heard anything.
Okay.
If I do, I will pass it along, Council.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Other items, Councillor Papp? You had another item?
Finally, I wanted to extend to staff, and in particular to Ms. Pizzato, the excellent and very professional intrinsic approach to the response to the Ombudsman's request and the inquiry. People don't realize how delicate and sensitive this is, and kudos to you, the staff, in particular Ms. Pizzato, for when I read this, I thought that's the way it should happen, that's the way it should be responded, and you deserve a lot of credit for having to deal with that. A very difficult set of circumstances at times, and I've been on both sides of the fence as a civil servant, and I must say you handled this very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Ms. Pizzato, on behalf of Council, thank you very much for handling that, and certainly you keep us on the straight and narrow in terms of the Municipal Act and the procedure bylaw and other things as well. So I see this letter, and I know Councillor Durley wants to comment as well, but I do see this letter as good news, actually.
Very good news.
That the ombudsman was asked by a resident, as is their right, to investigate some of the meetings that we may or may not have had. In this case, one that we didn't have, and in another case, one that we did have. In the one case that we did, it was a very contentious issue. And it's good to know that we, according to the Ombudsman's office and according to our procedures, follow the right procedures.
Yep.
And as we do, we vote in open session at all times, only go into closed session for those items for which we are permitted by legislation, and are very judicious to that. And I think, as Councillor Papp has indicated, a large part of that is due to Ms. Bizzato helping us with that. I know that she's taken a number of courses to ensure that we continue to comply with legislation and various interpretations. These things change based on judicial interpretations and interpretations of the Ombudsman's office, and Ms. Bizzato keeps circulating those to council and alerting myself to them to make sure that we continue to comply and follow all the guidance that other municipalities have and the Ombudsman's have. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Durley, hopefully I haven't stolen too much of your thunder away.
Well, it's not thunder. You have said in this what I was going to say in this.
Well, let's hear this.
The fact that we were compliant with the closed session, open session thing is due to Nancy's knowledge and Nancy's direction to there, and the way staff helps us in making sure that we are compliant, and I think that the investigation did definitely show that, but certainly it was Nancy's guidance that kept us in compliance. Therefore, there was no question whatsoever that we were out of line, and congratulations, Nancy, and kudos, you did a fantastic job echoing what you said, Mr. Mayor, in perhaps a little shorter sense.
Certainly shorter. Thank you, Councillor, but as heartfelt. Any others on that item? Okay, thank you. Any other items that are before us? Oh, I did want to comment on two items, if you don't mind, Council. The first is the, I'm trying to get my note here, the tax policy. You might be wondering, and I think maybe the treasurer could speak to this if needed, but there was a revision that was required. You'll recall last meeting I spoke about the tax ratios and the tax rates, and how there was a particular tool that the region used to deal with one property, and it was a payment in lieu property. So it was a government property, the casino, and it was deemed by the province that that wasn't their intention necessarily with the tool, that it wasn't for payments in lieu properties, but it was for taxable properties. So the calculation had to occur to include at least a taxable property, and that's the case. There is one particular taxable property that this impacts, and another payment in lieu property, and it impacts in a very big way to the same tune of the $3 million. So that was required. I don't know if the clerk can comment on whether there's a benefit to commercial taxpayers in Pelham. My understanding was that the taxable hit to that one taxable property is about $3,000. Can you comment on whether you saw a benefit to Pelham commercial taxpayers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we put in the revised rates for the commercial and the lower and upper bands for each, there was a split out between our commercial to that lower band, which in fact impacted the residential by about 30 cents over what we had.
Impacted the residential. Okay, that wasn't the intention. Did it not benefit commercial? It benefited commercial but hindered residential, is that correct? Okay. And the 30 cents would be on an average property?
On average, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that was not the intention. It was simply within the band. I'm going to have to find that out, but I think is that because of the shifting that occurs?
That's because the assessments were broken out between commercial residual, commercial other, which included shopping centers and so forth. And previously, those were included in the same rate. So when you calculated the rates out, the rate was always the same. With the region now, the rate is two different rates in those areas.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll have to raise that at the region as we set the tax rates. That was an unintended consequence, which I think Councillor Durley is going to speak about when we get to that item. The second item I wanted to highlight for council just quickly was the boundary changes. As I mentioned, I alluded to it last meeting. These changes that are being recommended are technical modifications to the proposed to the urban boundary map of Fawn Hill. So I don't know if anybody has any, I guess they didn't have any questions for this, but it's simply ensuring that the town's official plan and the region's plan are in compliance, and it's essentially right-sizing the boundaries from one jurisdiction to another where it makes the most sense. So just highlight that for you. If there's nothing further, I'm going to call the question on those items of consent. All those in favor? I'm sorry, Councilor Durley.
I did have a
apologize.
comment on tax ratios and tax
Okay.
rates, although I will
Good.
not be following your train of thought. I just, found with interest on page 5 of 12 of the report from the region on the 2013 rates of taxation, comparing the city of Thorold and the town of Pelham. The 2013 approved general levy, as I mentioned at the last meeting, for the town of Pelham is $12,434,30. Let me do that again. $12,434,060, which the town of Pelham collects in order to give to the region at different intervals during the time, during the year. The city of Thorold, for the same thing, is $12,073,924, which is
12 million?
less, $360,000 plus or minus less than what the town of Pelham will contribute. And then I think the amount of taxation, I think, filters into that. However, looking at the population figures in both websites, the city of Thorold has 1,000 more people, roughly a little over 1,000 more people than us, and we're paying 300,000 more. But anyway, that was just an interesting view that I'm looking at that, and some other things, and you know what a fan I am of the region, so I just wanted to bring that out. So thank you very much.
I think you're such a fan, Councilor. I'll have to get you a T-shirt.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. I'm sure the region would too. I love the region.
Well, it is interesting to see the differences, and no doubt, I mean, we're more than 90% residential. Is that correct, Madam Treasurer? Or 86% residential, and I think the city of Thorold is significantly lower than that, probably about 72% residential. So there are a number of differences between municipalities. So thank you for
They
highlighting
have the
that.
benefit of industry that we don't. But
That's
anyway,
right.
we won't go there.
That's right.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councilor Durley, you raised a correspondence item, the Township of Wainfleet, regarding wind turbine development.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to endorse and support that motion, and a notice be delivered to Wainfleet and to the Ministry of Environment, Energy, and Rural Affairs that the provincial government is forcing, and it mentions the words unwilling hosts. The controversial issue of wind turbines has been a hot button item in Wainfleet, along with other things. However, they have really did resolutions, and they were told that their resolution means absolutely nothing, that you're going to like it or not, you're going to get this. So I think it important that we look at the fact that more and more municipalities are being imposed upon being unwilling hosts for different things that are initiatives that are being put down from other levels of government. So I just want to say that we should be looking at supporting things like that, because certainly when the cell towers were an issue here, things were imposed upon us that we did have to fight tooth and nail in order to make people listen, and they finally were moved out. So I think that it's important to keep this on the radar screen to say, let the municipalities who know what their folks want and what their folks need, have some input, in fact, if you're going to be giving some things to that. So I would just like some support in that. Again, a motion to endorse and support and to notice these things out, if I can get a seconder for that.
Okay,
and we
thank you
can
to
discuss
receive
it.
and
Thank you.
support and endorse. Is there a seconder for that? There's no seconder, Counselor?
I will second that.
No second
Mr.
that?
Mayor. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Comments?
Thank you. I was pleased to second that because I think the concept of willing host is the question that's at the heart of this. And I think that it's really important for us to perhaps in our discussion separate the concept of willing host and the whole issue of wind turbines in and of itself. I don't think that our endorsement of a concept with respect to with respect to defining ourselves as a willing host in this or any other issue is a comment on whether we approve or disapprove of the issue of wind turbines. So I do think that it's important for municipalities to be heard and to be understood to be willing hosts or unwilling hosts with respect to specific issues. I think that's important information for any level of government to have. But I would like, in terms of this discussion, to understand that the endorsement is with respect to the idea of willing host or unwilling host as opposed to being an endorsement of a position with respect to wind turbines.
Thank you.
That was my intention, Mr. Mayor, not the wind turbine issue, but it was the willing host issue. And as I mentioned in a couple other preambles earlier.
I'm wondering from the clerk, the motion is to support and endorse. The concept is willing hosts. However, the resolution from the Township of Wainfleet, the second resolution, based on consistent position of the township and input received from the community, and specifically the Ministry of Environment, be now advised the Township of Wainfleet is not a willing host for industrial wind turbines. So is that the intention of the mover and the seconder, that this would say that Pelham is not a willing host, or that you're saying that you support the concept? I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth. I'm trying to clarify, so forgive me. So, Councillor, maybe you can clarify the...
My intention was exactly as Mr. Ribbiak brings forward, that the unwilling host issue is the point that I certainly want to draw, that you know, things such as wind turbines are being forced down municipalities that are unwilling hosts. So this was the intent of that, and you're absolutely right. And now that I think of it, it's endorsing the wind turbine issue, which was not my intention. You know, perhaps I should just withdraw that, and I would like to perhaps make another motion as far as the unwilling host matter. And I'm thinking about a word at this meeting, but I can certainly bring that up for discussion at the next meeting.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you, given what the councillor said, would your recommendation be that we postpone this until the next meeting and then ask the councillor to bring some wording changes to it? Or would it be that we, I guess, have to vote to take this off the table and ask the councillor to bring it back? Which do you recommend is the better course of action?
You could also have an option to amend the motion that's on the floor and simply say that the Township of Wainfleet's resolution be received and that staff be directed to develop a motion to support the willing host
Concept, yeah. Okay.
For the policy and priorities meeting.
Okay. Councillor, are you
I'm
satisfied
fully in
with that?
favor. That was my intention from the beginning. It wasn't the
so
wind
is that an
turbine issue
amendment?
that was in.
So that would be an amendment.
So Councillor Durley, you'll move that amendment.
I would certainly
therefore,
would.
And Councillor Ribbiak, will you
I would
second that?
second that, absolutely.
Okay. So the amendment is to as the clerk said, to receive it, but then to also forward it and ask staff to develop a concept for the willing host and to bring it to the next P&P meeting, priorities and policies meeting. Any further discussion on that amendment? There being none, I call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. And now do we have to vote on the main motion as amended, or is it?
I think you've replaced it, so.
We've replaced
yes,
it? So we're fine?
Vote on it as amended.
Okay,
You've
so
replaced the
now-
wording, so now vote on it as amended.
Now we have to since we've done that, we have to vote on the main motion as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amended motion is carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Durley and Madam Clerk, Councillor Ribbiak, for assisting on that. And we look forward to that information coming back to us at our future meeting. The next item is presentation consideration of correspondence requiring action. Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Curley, Councillor Accursi, that correspondence dated April 23rd, 2013 from the Royal Canadian Legion be received, and the request to use the fenced-off area southeast of the existing patio as an extension for their patio for a barbecue on May 26th, 2013 be granted, and that the clerk so advise the Legion. Discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We wish them well on their event. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Accursi, that the correspondence dated April 15th, 2013 from the Pelham Business Association regarding bench donations be received, accepted, and referred to staff for inclusion in the Peace Park and downtown Fenwick beautification projects. Discussion? Accursi, do you want to, any comments on that? It's pretty straightforward. I know it's been an issue that's been going on for a long time, and as our PBA rep, maybe you just want to quickly comment.
Mayor, in fact, it has been ongoing for a long time, and the PBA has kind of wrestled with what to commit the money to, and have brought forward a number of issues, some of which weren't able to be materialized in the way it had been envisioned. But the PBA does have approximately $10,000 earmarked to be spent, some of which they've indicated they want to commit to benches in both those sites, if they can be incorporated. If not, I'm sure if the town were to come back with an alternate proposal, PBA would give it some significant look.
Okay. Mr. CEO, they can be incorporated, can they?
Yes, they can, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we should express gratitude to the PBA for their generosity and their ongoing support. Look forward to those benches being both purchased and installed. The next item has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. The correspondence dated April 19th, 2013 regarding the regional bylaw to regulate smoking in an outdoor public place from the Niagara region be received, and that an invitation be extended to the Tobacco Control Program Manager of the Niagara Regional Public Health Department to provide further information with regard to the proposed bylaw to regulate smoking in an outdoor public place. I did note in their correspondence as well that it was their intention that they come before this body, and I think it's at our next meeting. So this is timely, and we look forward to that presentation. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the correspondence from the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake dated April 26, 2013, being their response to the Water Wastewater Review Task Force be received, and that the matter be referred to staff for a report outlining concerns and providing feedback on this issue to be provided no later than the June 3rd, 2013 meeting of Council. Any discussion on this matter at this time? Councillor Durley?
Yes, I fully support the motion from Niagara-on-the-Lake, and looking at what the town of Pelham has done in their water service delivery, especially the new meter program and all the good stuff that this municipality has taken the initiative of doing. In fact, if it comes under one entity, I'm sure that there will be some inequities created that are really not fair, and for somebody to come forward and say this is better, you better accept it, is another unwilling host issue, and I feel that staff will have a lot to say about this, and I look forward to that. Please be emphatic about that, because in in fact, I would like to be emphatic as well to say, let's look at all of the positives here and look at the benefit of everything and not looking at something that may impact negatively on somebody who is taking the initiative to do things properly. So I fully support this and really look forward to staff to bring forward a strong recommendation, a strong set of analysis points that we can give the region, the strong points of what we have done and what other municipalities may have done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durley, and I think that is the concern, that a municipality like ours, improves the infrastructure, as you stated, in so many ways, whether it's with the water meters or getting rid of the cast iron water mains, and the excellent work of our staff, and to say that someone wants to take that and not give you a fair market value for it really, doesn't make sense. So that's what's outlined here, and I know that we'll get into the discussion, the debate at our next meeting or future meetings, and we'll look forward to that more comprehensive report. But that's the concern. Anyone else on this at this time? We'll look forward to that discussion then. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I look forward to that. Thank you. The next item has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the correspondence submitted by Arthur Bruce Land regarding a claim for damages resulting from town construction be received, and that the council direct the clerk to respond to Mr. Land in accordance with the town's insurance claim protocols. Discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item, I'm looking for my note here. The next item, I think, is reports from members of council. Is that correct? Thank you. And I have 4 reports. The first is regarding the Ontario Medal for Young Volunteers. I was very pleased to be present when Mariah Bunz was presented the Ontario Medal for Young Volunteers on Monday, April 22nd, 2013. I have the programs here. She was presented this award by the Lieutenant Governor at Queen's Park in his residence at a very special ceremony. The town nominated Ms. Bunz for her work in promoting the Real Skate Park and for spearheading the funding support from the Aviva Community Foundation. And of course, as you know, she continues to be involved in that project. Ms. Bunz was one of 9 presented with this award across the province, so a huge honor this year for her. And she is now one of 111 in the province since 1998, so a very, very small group of individuals who have shone through the province. I did have the chance to speak with the Lieutenant Governor, and as Ms. Bunz did as well, and he actually indicated that he remembers the Aviva program, especially since it was his son, Michael Onley, who volunteers with Cogeco, that also interviewed Mariah on that day in Canada AM and the Aviva announcement, the winners in late January. And Mariah commented, she said that Michael Onley was nervous. She noticed he was nervous when he was interviewing her. It was one of his first interviews. And here she said, here she was extremely nervous when her father was presenting her with this award. So it's an interesting little story, but certainly it shows the wonderful work that she's done and spearheading that effort. And congratulations, Mariah, on behalf of council. The second item is the official launch of the Font Hill Bandshell, which occurred on April 25th. Councillor Durley and Papp were present at the launch of the 8th annual Font Hill Bandshell Concert Series. I had the chance to speak very briefly and indicated that, just as we heard this evening, that the bandshell is one of the key elements of our community. And as we saw in the report of the Cultural Master Plan, it's certainly the pictures tell a story, 1,000 words for each of those, and figure prominently to culture in our community. They have 12 amazing and amazing concerts planned beginning on June 20th with Jonesy, which is a Niagara, as it says there, Niagara's favorite party band, which is coming up on June 20th and going until September. The launch was also a time to thank sponsors for their involvement in each of the concerts series. And also they thanked the town, and we accepted that thanks, for the work in kind that we continue to provide with setting up and parking and now additional items like signage for this year. And I would ask the CEO to pass along thanks and Ms. Van Ravensway to staff who are involved in that. It certainly is, helps make that a wonderful success, so thank you very much. The third item is an open house regarding the East Fonthill Medical Arts Building, which occurred the same evening, and I had the pleasure of being joined by Councillors King, Durley, and Papp, and the CAO at an invitation-only event at Lookout for local doctors and medical practitioners. It was a chance to meet with Doctors Bushy and Heckenberg, and they're the ones that are putting together the East Fonthill Medical Arts Building, or as they call it, the Fonthill Health Center. They described it as a one-stop shop, here it is, of integrated healthcare building, a multidisciplinary approach, 30,000 to 40,000 square feet. What is planned there? They plan to have 5 to 10 family docs, an on-site pharmacy and lab, an IV infusion clinic, and specialists like ear, nose, and throat specialists, orthopedic surgeons, cardiologists, oncologists, and other specialists on rotating schedule of care. They also plan to include diagnostic imaging and testing. So it's a very, very exciting development, and it's similar to what we heard about at our last meeting from Mr. Allen, the Fonthill Health Center. It was a good turnout from those that were invited, and I would say another step along the path in making the Fonthill Health Center a reality and better health services for our community. And finally, I had the pleasure of being present at the official opening of the Pelham Farmers Market, which occurred last Thursday, May 2nd. Ivor MacArthur and his son Ross had the honor of cutting the burlap sack that officially opened the Pelham Farmers Market for the 10th season. And the committee member Bev Youngblood and Brienne Farms owner Ann Durst were also there assisting. It was great weather, a great turnout for the start of the 10th season, something that has really adapted and grown through the years, a vision of working together with the farm community. Who would have thought? It was a brilliant idea 10 years ago, a Thursday market, but it really works for our community, and things like the band shell building on top of that concept of a Thursday night market. So kudos and congratulations to all involved, and we wish you all the best for a 2013 season. Those are my reports, and now two other councillors have reports. The first is Councillor Ribbiak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two reports. First, with respect to the recent Communities in Bloom Participation Day. And it is indeed my privilege and great honor to recognize the spirit of volunteerism and the extremely valuable work done by the residents of our town. Community Cleanup Day was held on April 18th, 19th, and 20th. Gathered over 700 pounds of garbage picked up across Pelham by our community members and groups. Over 200 community members participated in the cleanup spread over 3 days. Adopted old groups, schools, businesses got out to tidy the community in which they live, work, and play. And of course, the committee would like to thank, and I think we would all like to thank, all who came out to participate, as well as the fabulous Fenwick Lions for providing barbecue, as they always do, on April 20th, and Tim Hortons for T-shirts, mugs, coffee to keep us all warm. What proved to be a very cold day in April. So those are my comments with respect to Communities in Bloom Cleanup Day. I'd like to take the opportunity while I've got the attention of council and those listening to us, that the Communities in Bloom Committee is currently looking for Town of Pelham residents who would like to showcase their gardens at the 2013 Communities in Bloom Garden Tour, which will be held this year on July 13th. If anyone is interested in their garden being featured in the Communities in Bloom 12th Annual Garden Tour, please contact Jessica Riddell at 905-892-2607, extension 341. Or, of course, Mr. Mayor, as you know, there's a website in which her address can be found as well.
Thank you.
And let me comment as well. My second report is with regard to the Town of Pelham's 23rd Annual Canada Day celebration. Communities in Bloom is Canada Day Committee is inviting us all to join them at Harold Black Park on Monday, July 1st for an afternoon and evening filled with live music, family-friendly fun including crafts and children's activities, food, fireworks, and much more. And new for 2013, it was tried last year, but weather didn't permit it, but tethered hot air balloon rides from 4 to 8 p.m. with a cost of $15 per person per ride. Pelham Mayor's Youth Advisory will be hosting Amp Fest and competition under the main tent. The parade starts at 1 p.m. at AK Whig School along Hay Street and ends at Harold Black Park. Parade and booth application forms are also available at our very famous website. Those are my reports, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your reports. Councillor Gurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week was National Volunteers Week, and appropriately, there were a lot of activities surrounding volunteers and recognition of them. And I had the honor of attending several functions, the first of which was the Senior Volunteer Appreciation Luncheon on April the 23rd. It was indeed a pleasure and a privilege to represent the town of Pelham at this luncheon, convened to recognize the efforts of our volunteers who give so freely of their time and energy on behalf of residents and staff at the Woodlands of Sunset. This year there was a combined group which also included those who volunteer at Rappledale Lodge. It was all together from one, held at the Casadante in the city of Welland. The event was very well attended by well over 100 volunteers, and recognition in the form of certificates and pins were given out to commemorate plateaus of 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 years of service. One very special award was paid to Carol Rappledale, recognizing an amazing 55 years of volunteer service at both Rappledale Lodge and Woodlands of Sunset. Congratulations were also offered to Carol Rappledale and Helen Durley, who had both received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee medals, which were awarded in 2012 in the fall. Very difficult to address a large group when your mother's in the audience, especially she sometimes has some critical reports to come back on. But I managed to survive through that one. The second event was the Pelham Art Festival Volunteer Appreciation event. The mayor was busy starting his second career in radio at the town of Fort Erie with the call to the post presentation that evening, and I was very happy to fill in for him. It was indeed an honor to mark the annual art festival overwhelming success that they've had in the last 26 years. Also a thank you to the sponsors that helped them to have this very successful event. This group has raised, through its unbelievable energy and dedication, over $350,000 in the past 26 years, most of it donated to Pelham Libraries to help the library service in our town. Also very worthy to note that they do give a bursary to a deserving student of E.L. Crossley as well. The highlight of the evening, aside from the excellent fellowship and meet and greet opportunities, was the presentation of a check for $10,000 from Chair of the Evening, Heidi Tubrake, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to Maxine Gaylor, the Chair of the Library Board, and Stephanie Stowe, the librarian, monies earned from the 2012 festival. The third event that I will report on is the Welland River Floodplain Associated meeting of May the 1st. I attended the above captioned meeting because there is potential impact to a lot of properties that are located within the town of Pelham, especially those that border or are very near to the Welland River. The event was attended by, I think, over 100 concerned citizens, and they had the honor of hearing a presentation by Dr. Slobodan Simonovic, a professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Waterloo. He's an expert in that field, world-renowned. He has worked worldwide in dealing with floodplain issues and watershed issues, and one of the members of the advisory committee, the Public Advisory Committee, is Glenn Robbins, who is a property owner along the Welland River as well. He was in attendance along with several other Pelham residents, as well as some members of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Dr. Simonovich gave his opinion of the process used by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority to come up with the proposed revision to the existing floodplain lines that were done somewhere in the mid-'80s. Nobody seems to know where the background information came from with all of that good stuff, but there's new things that are coming forward that are very interesting. His presentation was full of facts, and he thought the NCPA may have overlooked some things in his current study. He pointed out, among other things, that the established new floodplain lines is really not in compliance with the Conservation Authority Act, in the fact that the entire watershed should be looked at, not just a portion of it. And in fact, the impact of a lot of this was on the central region of the floodplain and or the watershed, and therefore he thought that perhaps the if looking at the whole watershed might give a different picture. He also indicated that one of the things that were lacking, one of the main things that were lacking, was a lack of public consultation, which Mr. Bruce Timms, the regional councillor who is now the chair of the Conservation Authority, was in attendance at this meeting along with Tony DeMaria, the CAO of the Conservation Authority, and they assured the group that they will be heard and that communication will be open to them and that public consultation will take place. Look forward to hearing more information from that. Certainly there's a lot of interest and a lot of information that needs to come forward before these things go through. For now, I believe everything is on hold until they can do some further study. The Conservation Authority has a peer review going on with another engineer, and certainly if they look at Dr. Simonovich's input, that may give them a completely different picture as far as their study is concerned, and I thank you for the opportunity to report that to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durley, for filling in on those volunteer appreciations. They are so important that we appreciate our volunteers, and I appreciate you volunteering to represent council at each of those events, and also giving us the update on the Welland River Floodplain Association meeting. Very, very interesting, and we look forward to progress on that, and I hearken back to the presentation that we had here last year, and I appreciate the efforts of Mr. Robbins, who's in the audience this evening, on that committee of residents that are involved in that, and we look forward to other items coming forward on that. So thank you, Councillor Durley and Councillor Rubiak, for your reports. Now we move to staff reports requiring action. We have a couple of reports. The first has been moved by Councillor King, the seconded by Councillor Ribiak. The council received a request for variation to the Town of Pelham fence bylaw 1034, 1985, and the Timsdale Estates subdivision agreement, and then a variance from the Town of Pelham fence bylaw to allow a maximum 9-foot-high fence/sound barrier along the northerly property boundaries, whereas 6 feet are allowed, be granted. Discussion to the item? Councillor Rubiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my comment is with regard to the process that we are involved in terms of looking at a variance regarding the fence bylaw. I know that when I first read this, my first reaction was to call the clerk and ask why we were going to look at this, and she said it's because Committee of Adjustment doesn't have jurisdiction over the fence bylaw, council does, and therefore we need to look at it. And what struck me was the difference in the process between that and the Committee of Adjustment and this one. Committee of Adjustment, when people request a variance, there's a process of communicating to neighbors and others of a public meeting, and opportunities provided to residents to come forward and provide an opinion, and gives Committee of Adjustment to members the opportunity to consider those in making a decision. I've read the letter that accompanied this request. I have no other sense of the impact of this fence on the community. So I'm feeling a little lost with regard to the amount of information that I have on which to voice an opinion and help with a decision. So that's my only comment. I think that there's something more that we ought to have, I think, before making a decision with regard to this, at least in terms of the process.
Thank you. I don't know who to. Are you looking for a response or?
Well,
I know you formerly sat on the Committee of Adjustment, so you certainly have the background there as well.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, if I may, what I'd like is perhaps an answer from perhaps it's the clerk with regard to the process, or maybe it's the CAO. Maybe we can be looking at finding a process to deal with fence bylaws that provides a greater opportunity for input than is currently being given. If this is the process, then I'll participate in it, but it does seem to be a little thin in terms of providing us with the information that we might find valuable in making a decision like this one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Can you respond to the councillor's concerns?
Defer to the Keegan, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
to the acting director of planning and development,
Through you, Mr.
Mr.
Mayor.
Jennings.
Our current process is that it's dealt with at the council level. I do know that there are municipalities that do deal with different variances through the Committee of Adjustment to open it up to get that public input.
So, Mr. Jennings, in our case, it's dealt with here, but in other communities, it's dealt elsewhere.
Yeah, through you, it can be dealt with at Committee of Adjustment level.
Okay. So just for clarity, your issue is not specifically with this particular item before us. It's more in general with the process.
My comment is with respect to the generality of a process like this one, but I also want to draw a bit of a line between that and the specifics in this. I see nothing to be problematic about somebody coming forward and asking for a fence height that exceeds the bylaw because it deals with a particular issue, as in this case. It's just that I, as part of this decision-making body, feel that we're only getting one tiny sliver of information, and it may be enough, but I'm not sure that the bylaw was enacted in the first place without having given some regard to some of the other issues that might go with fence height, and we're not hearing anything about those other issues. So if I was going to ask for anything, I guess in this it might be to move that we provide an opportunity for public input with respect to this from any interested party in the area to give us the information that we might be able to use in making this decision. Perhaps there isn't any, but I don't know that, and it bothers me a little bit that we'd be making a decision like this to provide a variance to a bylaw that might have had very good reasons for being put into effect in the first place without some discussion as to those things.
Okay, thank you. I know you said you might move that, so you haven't. So, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand what my colleague is referring to. I'd point out that we have a process, and we've used the process many times, whether it's dealing with fence height or sign configuration or what have you, and that is the process that we are currently saddled with. And to single out this one particular application at this point in time, to me, seems to be unfair and a bit heavy-handed. So if the councillor, the gist of the councillor's direction is that we perhaps take a look at the overall process at another time, exclusive of this particular current application, I'd be supportive of that. I wouldn't be supportive of a motion that would single out this particular application, as I think it's been dealt with the same way that we've dealt with many applications for variance over the last 3 years. We rely on our staff for the administration of the bylaws and recommendation and report to us, and then we decide whether we support the recommendation or we don't. If we're going to vary from that process, then that's a whole different discussion. I could not support my colleague on what he was proposing he might put forward.
Okay. What I'm hearing is, if other colleagues agree, what I'm hearing is that we would direct staff maybe to investigate the best practice regarding issues like this, fence bylaws, changes, and come back to us at a policy and priorities meeting with, at the future. That I think would satisfy, and if it's in line with what you're recommending. We want to see, the clerk has given me a note here that, and maybe she can comment on it, why this is an issue. I don't know if we want further clarity on it, but I think that's the key element that we're hearing from the CBO, that some municipalities deal with this, some don't. So what's the best practice? So if you want to-
Well, I would
Counselor, do
say,
you want-
I would concur with that, with the proviso that this not hold up this particular application.
Okay. Councillor Papp, you got a comment on that?
I just concur. I understand the gist of where Councillor Ribbiak is going and examining the raison d'etre of the terms of reference for the Committee of Adjustment. But the truth is, as Councillor Kirsty is we're saddled with it currently. Let's deal with the process through the policy and priorities, and let's deal with this one as it stands right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not opposed to the recommendation that's been put forward by the staff on this. I just would like to point out a couple of things, that there is a difference, or a contradiction, I should say, between the letter from the party and the report itself in the height of that fence, because one is requesting 8 feet, the other one's recommending 9 feet, so I'm not sure what it's really meant to be. And finally, the conclusion and recommendation in the staff report is that all parties involved in the review support the variance request. So all of that being said, I agree with Councillor Kersey that this is the practice that we have been following, and if there's a change to be made, it should not be made at this point. It should be something coming forward down the road. Thank you.
Mr. Jennings, to the discrepancy, is there, I'm sorry, Councillor, I'm trying to find the discrepancy. A height of 6 to 8. Mr. Jennings?
That was the fire chief that did this report.
Say that again?
Sorry, that was the fire chief that created this issue sheet?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, in the second paragraph of the letter, they state that 9 feet. If you look at the picture of the proposed wall, the wall itself is actually 8 feet, but then there's little points at the top, so we changed it to read 9 because you have to consider all parts of the structure, just not the fence itself or the sound barrier itself. So if they put little finishing points on it, so they did ask for going from 6 to 8, but then in the second paragraph, they asked for 9 because of those ends.
Thank you for the clarity. Councillor, anything further on that? No?
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Ribbiak for a second time?
Thank you. Yes, just for clarity, I wasn't proposing more work for the Committee of Adjustment. I don't mind that council look at it. It was merely a question for a process that provided us with more information, which might have included a public meeting. I would I'll also endorse the suggestion of my colleagues with regard to having a report from staff looking at a process to apply to variances to the fence bylaw with the intent of finding a mechanism that would provide us with more information than one source in allowing us to make these decisions.
Okay, why don't you move that, Council, that we
I
direct
move that.
the amendment and that we direct staff to investigate best practice in relation to the fence bylaw and other like bylaws. And is there a seconder for that, Councillor Papp? And that would come up at a future PMP meeting? Okay, any further discussion to that,
I have
Councillor?
a question. Do we want to make that motion as specific as stating just the fence bylaw, or do you want a best practices with respect to administration of bylaws in general? You know, with respect
I
to,
think-
say, a sign bylaw variant?
I suggested the fence bylaw and like bylaws.
Okay, you said
Is
you
that
added
okay,
and like.
Councillor, or
Okay,
could
that's fine.
we have other words to clarify? You're okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay?
Yep.
Did you get that, Madam? Okay. Others? Okay, so to the amendment, all those in favor?
Just point of clarification, that we're allowing, we're gonna receive and allow the fence to be altered to a height of 9 feet, and adding this as the other, it seems to me that they probably should be divided, because one is completely different than the other.
Should it be a separate, I understand what you're saying. Should it be separate, or can we?
Well, the motion as amended would endorse suggesting the staff report, and if that fails, then it goes back to just the motion as originally put. If the amendment succeeds, then you would vote on both. You could always divide it at that point if need be.
So it's fine to amend it as it's fine to attach the amendment on here. I think Councillor Durley's.
It would be correct either way. You could make it as a new motion because it's not related specifically to that. It is a separate issue. Or you could deal with it as an amendment.
So we can deal with it this way, Councillor?
Okay, I find it a bit confusing because we're dealing with, yes, we're gonna allow this and then we're gonna do that. It appears that if, you know, we're dealing with apples and oranges in the same resolution in my mind, and,
Okay.
you know.
I agree with you, but
I
I was worried about notice of motion and all those other things in my head, so I thought an amendment was the safest route.
Do we need a motion to give staff direction, or could it just
No, you can
be
give
staff
staff
direction to flow from this? Would that solve the issue? And then we don't have to worry about an amendment? Does that clarify?
We can do that. If,
You can make a motion.
following, immediately following? Okay, so what the clerk's indicated is agreeing with Councillor Durley that we can, I prefer to have it in staff direction, a motion.
Do it that way.
So, motion to remove the amendment, I guess is what we have to do, is that correct? On the floor? And then vote on it.
So yes.
Rescind the
So
amendment.
you'll remove the amendment, and we'll bring it up immediately following this. Councillor Papp will second that, or move that. Councillor Durley will second that.
Yeah.
All those to take the amendment off the floor. All those in favor, carried. Now to the main motion, no amendment. Further discussion, there being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And I see the Baxters are here in the audience. Sorry about the discussion. You're kind of getting wrapped up.
You're
Approved.
You're okay.
It's been approved, and now to the larger issue, not the specific issue which has been approved, to the larger issue. Do we have the wording on that again? That, and I think it was Councillor, forget who it was, Councillor Ribiak Papp.
Councillor Ribiak and Councillor Papp, that staff be directed to prepare a report to investigate best practices to apply variances to the fence bylaw and like bylaws with the intent of finding a mechanism to provide council with more information than one source and allowing these decisions to move forward.
You fine with that? We've had a lot of discussion on it. Let's.
I think so.
Okay, we're going to call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. So we're done with that issue. Let's see how we wrestle through the next issue, which has been moved
Call the
by
contractor tomorrow.
Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The council received the issue sheet regarding the development agreement for Lorna Rogers and Robert Rogers, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows: that for reasons outlined in the issue sheet, council approved the proposed development agreement, and further that council consider the required bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign a development agreement between the town of Pelham and Lorna and Robert Rogers later on this evening's agenda. Discussion. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item. Been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Clark. The council received the issue sheet regarding the library needs assessment revision of the terms of reference, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The council approved the expanded terms of reference for library needs assessment study. This is an issue that's been on our agenda a couple of times. We wanted to ensure that the library board looked at it, dealt with it, and we've been assured that through the report. Any further comments? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to that work being done and that information coming to our council. Thank you. Can I request that? I would request, given my earlier disclosed conflict of interest, that we divide the bylaws and deal with 17.3 separately. So if council's amenable to that. Thank you. Yeah, I have a motion here from Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribiak, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaws and dispense with the reading of the bylaw. One being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Lorna Marie Rogers and Robert James Rogers, and the second being a bylaw to amend Schedule A to bylaw 3366, 2013, being a bylaw to set the rates of taxation for the year 2013. Any discussion on those items? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the following bylaw have been considered a first time, be numbered as follows. Bylaw 3371 and bylaw 3372 be now considered a second and third time and passed. The mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I would ask Councillor Clark to deal with the next matter. Thank you very much.
We have a motion from Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaw and dispense with the reading of the bylaw. One being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement with Mr. Brian Kuzi. Moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor, no, don't need that.
You
Okay.
can vote on that first.
All right. Comments or questions? None. Call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
And now you move to the second part of it.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that the following bylaw, having been considered a first time and numbered as follows, bylaw number 3373, 2013, be now considered a second and third time and passed, that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Okay.
And we would always sign that instead. Okay, so we'll see
Yeah.
after the meeting.
Thanks, Larry. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Council. The next item has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that the news release dated April 22nd, 2013, Jones's takes action on aggregates and introduces an Aggregate Recycling Promotion Act and the proposed private members bill 56 by Stephanie Jones, MP, be received, and that the information be referred to the next regular Policy and Priorities Committee meeting scheduled for May 21st, 2013. Sylvia Jones, what did I say? Stephanie Jones. I went to school with Stephanie Jones. This is Sylvia Jones. This, just quickly on this, this is an item when I was at Queen's Park as part of the award for Ms. Buns. This particular private members bill was presented to the legislature. It is an issue that has been discussed in terms of aggregate recycling and the importance of this. It's a question that the Ministry of Natural Resources had asked the CAO and I last summer when we met with their policy advisor, asking what the town's policy is in terms of aggregate recycling. And I've also, asked about at the regional level. But I think it's also something that was brought up at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference when the top aggregate producing municipalities got together. There's actually a group in the province of what they call top aggregate producing municipalities. So I know that there may be some ramifications of this type of policy. I'm not asking that council endorses, this particular private members bill, but I think that we investigate the concept. So the idea is that we can get information and discuss it at our next PNP meeting. So, anything further at this point? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to that discussion then. Thank you. And now, we do have an in-camera portion of the meeting, but we do have some members of the audience present, so we are going to recess that. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. The council recess the in-camera portion of the meeting and reconvene immediately following committee of the whole meeting scheduled later for this evening. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We'll now take a 5-minute break and resume with committee of the whole. Thank you. Kersey, that the meeting do now reconvene to complete the agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The next motion is to extend the meeting. Is there a motion to extend the meeting?
It's only 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I agree, 5 minutes.
The curfew from
10:15.
All right.
Well, unless you got something else, we're going to be here for a couple hours?
We might be
I'm
here
gonna
for
order
a
drinks
while.
then.
So 10:30 or till the agenda's done? Which would you-
10:30.
10:30.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor King,
Call my place, they can deliver.
that the rules of procedure contained in the Town of Pelham procedure bylaw be suspended and the remainder of the business listed on the agenda for this meeting continued to be considered until 10:30. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Now, it has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following matters under the Municipal Act 2001 as outlined below. 1. Item under Section 239(2)C, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, one item. 2, item under Section 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting municipality or local board, 3 items. And 3, items under Section 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 2 items. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We'll now move into closed session. By Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that council adjourn the in-camera session and that council do now rise with no report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaw and dispense with the reading of the bylaw, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of council at its meeting held on the 6th day of May, 2013. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the following bylaw have been considered first time be numbered as follows. Bylaw 3374, 2013 be now considered a second and third time and passed, and the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that this regular meeting of council be adjourned at 10:30 until the next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, May 21st, 2013, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Here's your file back.
Thank you.
Thank you. And here's all your ink.